Good evening, family. Welcome to Finding Ourselves. It's your girl, Spirit Child, in the house tonight with one of my very, very, very special in-house guests. This is my everything, my ride or die, my co-host, and the captain of my spirit. In-house this evening is Mr. Richie Rich.
Hey, family.
Welcome so much to the show this evening. I really appreciate you taking the time to do this. Family, this is a part of Spirit Speaks and our series called Finding Ourselves. Previously, you've heard some of the stories from some of my friend girls, but I wanted to do something just a little bit different tonight and get the perspective of Mr. Richie Rich in the house this evening. So, without further ado, Rich, who are you? Tell the family your story.
Is that the first question?
Yeah.
And the first question is what?
Who are you? What's your story?
Okay. The question is, who am I and what's my story?
Correct.
Oh, okay. Well, who am I? I am a spirit that inhabits this flesh vessel called a body. Now, how I got here is kind of beyond the scope of my intelligence at this point. It probably always, but my story is somewhat, well, actually it's not unique in the environment, but it is, in my humble opinion, unique in my response to the environment. I'm good old-fashioned cat from Fort Worth, Texas. As we say, funky town.
Funky town.
Funky town in the house, you know. Grew up, like I said, in a somewhat normal, dysfunctional family. You know, there's no such thing as the perfect family, but so it's normally dysfunctional. You know, trials and tribulations, maybe some abnormal to other families, but sure, other families experience stuff that I probably have not, so it's probably all close to the same. But just doing that and engaging in life, even from a very early age, I understood that life is finite, and the world that we live in is, I don't want to say harsh, but it can be unforgiving. You know, there are no retakes sometimes. Well, actually, anytime. But you just remember things that stand out, and I can just remember in just some of the earlier years. I mean, it wasn't bad, but I can remember some times where, as a young kid, I was actually faced with life or death situations. You know, basically have to be the protector of one of my parents that was about to be shot, and I was actually used for that human shield. You know, because he wasn't going to shoot his son.
No, it's my understanding. In this house, you were immensely loved by both of your parents.
Yeah, but even in that, you know, that was the logic. You know, in holding me up there. That doesn't necessarily mean that was the reality.
Well, that's very true.
You
It
know,
could have ended extremely different.
It could have been extremely different. So I could just remember just being somewhat not limp, but still. And I can remember, wow, it's how you remember things. And I can remember looking at him. But I don't necessarily think he was looking back. Remember, because I told you about it before.
Mm-hmm.
He was looking, but he was looking for an opening. So, you know.
And I got to ask. Was Mr. Belcher a sharpshooter?
Yes.
Okay.
He was a marksman. Yeah. Yeah. He was in the military. He was a marksman. Absolutely. Very and close range. Oh yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah.
So the ancestors was looking out for you.
Yeah. Absolutely. So I can just remember those things like that. Of course, much loved in the house. Remember seeing the determination of my father, who was paralyzed in Vietnam, and still managed to have a very productive and lucrative practice as preparing taxes and books. As an accountant. I remember him driving this brown Oldsmobile.
Oh, snap.
Yeah. Paralyzed with all the hand gadgets, that now it's not that big of a deal, but back in the early 70s, yeah, it was a big deal. That was a big deal. So I can just remember that ability for him to focus on what he did have and not what he didn't have.
So no limitations.
No limitations, You sit up here and dwell on that all day long. Where's that going to get you, kind of stuff. Of course, you just kind of, add those pieces in later. But I'm sure that has a lot to do with my desire. Yeah, it would be a desire to understand the world for the way the world really is, and how to live in a most prosperous and healthy way in it. So, like I said, I wasn't a 2-year-old, 3-year-old, 4-year-old sitting back reading Plato or nothing, But I was definitely active, engaged in life. Okay, well, this works, this doesn't work. Okay, just something, certain things that I wouldn't try to do. Backflip, wasn't gonna do that. Because I would say, man, you're going to flip over and break your damn neck. Come on.
So you wasn't tumbling and all of that
I know, yeah. I was a very good tumbler. I loved gymnastics. Did gymnastics.
Really?
I would do all the front flips, somersaults you wanted to. But when you talking about, okay, flip backwards, no.
That's interesting. I never knew that.
Yeah.
You never told me that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, very.
I knew you did karate.
Judo and all that stuff. Yeah, we actually had a gymnastic club right in the front yard.
Why doesn't that surprise me?
Yeah,
that's another Highland Hills thing, family. Y'all know nothing about that.
Yeah, we'd set up springboards and do flips and dive over the bushes. We actually went to some gymnastic classes. Took gymnastics in elementary school. Was in the gymnastic show. Where we jumped over the horses, and I love that.
You had them little tight leotards.
No, we were just wearing shorts and stuff. We off. This is Fort Worth,
right?
Yeah, you don't want to do that, especially back then. But yeah, the backflip, that wasn't happening. So just really understanding that life is somewhat fragile, and it's a moment in time that you have. It's finite, as I said earlier. So just growing up that way, elementary school, middle school, somewhat typical, but somewhat not.
I've heard stories.
Well, yeah, because it's always been like I said, it's always been my desire to know the way the world really works. So, you get to that age and you want to learn about girls. Okay, well, you can hear all this stuff about the girls, and then you can hear about. About the source. Basically, who's telling you this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And instinctively, or who knows if it's instinctively. Now, I believe there's a combination of both. Well, if the source is kind of flawed, that there's a good chance that the information is flawed.
Yeah, that goes without saying,
Yeah.
But sometimes folks need that reminder.
Right. So, I remember going hearing all the girl stories. This is what you do. This is what they like. And I can remember as we were talking, I remember like, okay, as soon as this over with, I'm finna get on my bike, and I'm fixing to go to the library.
So that was a deliberate purpose to get to the source, to the real source.
Went straight to the library, just kind of digested everything I could digest about females. But the thing that stuck out most was the anatomy part.
Imagine that.
Yeah, I was like, damn. Clitoris? What is that? Oh, ooh, it does that? Shit.
Check.
Check.
But I think the family can appreciate that. You know why?
Why?
Because there's so much dysfunction in relationships just in general. And, from a female perspective, you hear a brother popping his gums about this, that, and the other. And then from a woman's perspective, it's like, man, he on some bull.
Right.
Whatever, man. Go on. Because the one that talks the loudest is generally the one who can do absolutely nothing.
Right. Absolutely. So, as a young kid, I don't remember how old I was, but I was pretty young.
Well, yeah, because you said I hopped on my bike.
Well, yeah. Shoot,
you didn't say I got in the car and sped around the corner to the library.
No. I hopped on my bike. So I'm serious. I must have been about 6 or 7, in the 6th or 7th grade.
Well, so I often say, because I got a question, because I remember there was a point in time when you were not allowed to cross Oak Grove.
Oh yeah, couldn't cross Oak Grove. Did cross Oak Grove. Was told I better beat the car back to back to Cloverdale, and did, to receive a beatdown.
Yeah, your mama didn't play.
Yeah, but I only did it once. See, and that's kind of what you find out about life especially in those special moments. Mm-hmm. You will make mistakes in life, and especially in my world, in my journey, as you say, I've made them, but I tend to make them only once. So if you then that's paramount to successful and a healthy and fulfilling lifestyle. So in middle school, got introduced to music. Well, I got introduced to playing an instrument. I've always been music.
Right.
I've always been music. DJ'd even back before I even started playing instruments. I would wire my mom's 8-track players together.
Now that's deep.
Yeah, I'd have 2 8-tracks playing, and I knew what song would be on what track when this song went off on both of them, and I would just.
So you was in the lab a long time
ago. Hey, I was one of the originators of the playlist.
So what was your favorite playlist?
Oh my gosh! It was her music, so it was her parties. I literally would play the music for her parties. Little kids sitting in there with 2 decks, knocking the buttons out because I know what they listen to, and I knew what order they would come in.
Yeah, that's some science behind that. That's some science.
Yeah. So
I got a question though.
Yeah.
You in there in the DJ, and I've heard stories that you've always wore suits.
Yeah.
Did you have on a suit?
Now, actually, during the parties, I probably did not. I don't recall having on the suits, but just kind of well dressed and groomed, because really, you really weren't supposed to be in the party or at the party, because kids just not at parties. But he happens to be the DJ, so I gotta kind of pass on that. But just really understanding the nuances of life, I would like to reflect on something I think that's important. That was, I guess you'd say, innate in me, that kind of crystallizes my desire to know how the world works. I've always